Hi everyone, welcome one more time to one more episode of your Frederish podcast. With me, your host for the day, I'm Gary, so I'm really glad you're here with me. And just as usual, I suggest you relax, sit down, especially today, especially on this episode, because we're going to talk about something very fun, very cool. At least in my opinion, I really hope you enjoy the talk. So, without further ado, what am I gonna tell you? Have you ever heard about something called? Let me just rephrase it. What is the first thing that comes to your mind when I say the words "A Song of Ice and Fire"? Well, maybe you know what I'm talking about, but I know for a fact that there are like lots and lots of people who have absolutely no idea of what these words mean. So what is this about? But if I change the these words to three simple words, Game of Thrones. Well, I probably you also you neither do you know what these words mean, but I can totally say that most people do, and most likely you listening to me right now do know what these words mean, right? Because of our great HBO show, okay? And well, it's quite popular. It's one of the most popular series in the world, at least in the past 20 years. I would say of all times, right? Lots of people know that, but why did I use such a strange, set of words to describe Game of Thrones in the first time I asked it? So what the heck is A Song of Ice and Fire? Well, what if I tell you that? Okay, let me just put it before I say that. Most people, as far as I talk to people, know that or at least believe correctly that the HBO's TV show has come from books, or from one book at least, right? But what most people do not know is that these books are not called Game of Thrones. Well, actually, the first one is, right? So here I go again. What if I tell you that the original name of the show is not Game of Thrones, but A Song of Ice and Fire? So where does Game of Thrones come from? The name, book number one. Okay, it's called Game of Thrones. So all books, at least so far, I'm gonna talk more about it, have a name starting with A. Okay, I'm gonna be more specific about it, but let me just say that if you know the show, okay, you possibly have read the books, or you're reading the books, or making your way to them. Or, of course, most likely you would and will enjoy the books as soon as you read them, right? And the big question here, the real big question to this episode is, why do I think you should read the books? Okay. Well, actually, I do not think you should read the books. But as I was saying, I believe if you like the show, especially if you're a big fan of the show, of HBO's show, you most likely will love, or at least enjoy reading the books, right? But I totally think that everyone should at least give it a try, okay? And part number two here is that, well, no surprise, the name says it all, the title, even in Brazil, the books are written in English, okay? So just quick history about the books, right? Not about the story, but about the publishing and the offer. It's the books are written by a famous and popular American novelist called George R. Martin. Okay, well, the R. It's totally Tolkien based. He's admitted a big fan of J.R.R. Tolkien. Okay, who wrote the Lord of the Rings, by the way. And I could say that he is as big as Tolkien, and maybe even a little bigger. Okay, some would say much bigger, but I like keeping comparisons according to the time people live, right? Had Tolkien lived the present days, God knows what he would do, you know, what he would have done, or he would have been doing, basically. But all right, so he's a big fan of Tolkien, big inspiration. So if you're not familiar with George R. R. Martin, but familiar with Tolkien, with Lord of the Rings, you totally know what I'm talking about. Basically, I'm talking about the so-called fantasy, okay, books, okay, some people say fantasy literature, okay, fantastic literature, but this kind of thing, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, etc. All right, this thing of magic with medieval times, with dwarves and trees walking all around, and magic going on, wars and warriors, blood and wars, and so on and so forth. All right, so George R. R. Martin, Game of Thrones author, he's worked he worked actually in Hollywood as a movies writer, producer, etc. These in this area, it's basically writing scripts, writing scenes and things like that, right? For 20 years or more. So one day by the early 90s, I'm just kind of quoting him basically, or talking based on what he said himself, what I heard from his mouth. I mean, not personally, of course, but on YouTube there's lots of videos with him talking and explaining that. You just totally go for it if you want to check it out. But he said that he wasn't feeling comfortable writing to Hollywood because there was a little very heartless limitation called budget. All right. So because he would write stuff, okay, making a long story short, he would write stuff and 9 out of 9 times he would have to cut scenes, cut parts because of the budget, right? Which makes total sense, because we're talking about movies. We're talking about the 90s, the 80s, when things actually had to be done like 90% in real, with real people, real animals, real everything. There wasn't much influence of CGI, right? So he quit. I mean, I don't remember exactly if he quit Hollywood, quit this job as a writer in Hollywood to write Game of Thrones, or if Game of Thrones, the Song of Ice and Fire idea came to his heart basically right after that. But I think it was kind of something in between it, So he left Hollywood and started dedicating at some point. Here we're almost like 92, 93 more or less. And again, making a long story short, he started working on this novel that I don't know if he knew that. I don't know if he will assume that, but probably is his masterpiece. I mean, I'm not too audacious here to say that this is certainly his greatest work ever. Anyways. So he started doing that, and in the year 1996, book number 1, A Game of Thrones, came out. All right, and it was a big success in the area. Okay, of course, not even a single word of it came to Brazil back then. It would take years and years, so we would have known of the existence of this person and this work, of course. But it had some repercussion. It had some feedback. The first big fans starting showing up, to writing him letters, right, and emails later, years later, and then all started. He started having lots of positive feedback, and then the rest is history, as they say, right? Book number 2, called A Clash of Kings, came on 1998, 2 years later. Book number 3, called A Storm of Swords, okay, came in 2000. Book number 4, called A Feast for Crows, came in 2006, and book number 5 came in 2000, called A Dance of Dragons, came in 2011. Okay, and then we have 2 more books to come. Yeah, believe it or not, the last 2 books, even books number 6, hasn't been released to the very present, where when I'm recording this podcast date, July 31st, 2023. All right, so more than 10 years, more than a decade after book number 5 was published, we still do not have book number 6. Okay, why? I have lots of theories, but who knows for a fact what's going on, right? Last time I checked, book number 6 was said to be released this year, 2023, in November. Okay, but there's been so many release dates that I can be so sure. I really hope, I really hope it's released in this year, in November this year, or even earlier, possibly. But who knows, right? And I'm gonna go deep into the reasons why I think, but I really believe that. I mean, I really know for a fact that the HBO show came with the release of book number 5. All right, the last published so far, if you remember. So right after that, it was like boom. The whole world knew the story. The whole world started talking about it, and of course watching the show and talking about it, and many people came to the books, myself included. When I first read the books, when I started reading the books, and I've read them all so far, the 5 books. It was year 2012, all right, 2012. That's really caused a big attention to the author. People started, he at least doubled. I would say that multiplied tenfold the number of attention he had, 100 times more attention than he had before the show was the story was before Game of Thrones, not HBO Game of Thrones came around, right? And that probably, again, that's my theory. Okay, I never heard him saying anything about it, but he probably, I believe, felt the pressure, because he came from a quite successful book offer, American book offer in America and some English-speaking countries, to a top 100 celebrities in the world. All right. If I'm not mistaken here, I believe he was pointed as one of the top 100 most influential people on Earth some years ago. I may be wrong. I'm gonna check this information, but anyways, you should do the same. But anyways, undisputable that he became a world celebrity. So there was big pressure coming to his shoulders. All right, and I totally believe that kind of went through his head, and I don't judge. All right, I believe that it's not something easy to deal with. All right, also because I'm gonna be more specific about the book itself without spoilers. Okay, don't worry about it. But I also believe that many of the secrets, okay, and mark this word, secret, okay, have been released from, have been guessed by people, okay, over the years, okay, people all around the world. There were forums online, people discussing that online about possibilities, right? And okay, there's lots of things that don't make any sense, some things that make sense but probably aren't reality inside the universe of the story, but lots of them who are true and have proven so by the HBO series, right? Okay, there's a lot to be to be said here about this topic, and it's probably not gonna be this only episode. This is just an introduction, okay? I will bring more, but just let me just move to the final part of this episode by talking to you about why do I think you should give it a try. Okay, what does this book have, okay, of special? Okay, the book, without spoilers, okay, it's a medieval based world, okay, not ours, okay, it's not Earth, but it's a Earth like planet, okay. Um, and we have the same rules, we have like everything that has on Earth. I mean, almost everything that has on Earth in terms of nature, we have there, okay, in this universe. And it's a medieval based, meaning that we still have kings ruling and all sorts of doings, medieval doings, going on. The way people think, the way people work, rule, etc., and interact with each other. It's totally medieval based. So we have a reference, okay. Of course, the difference is that it's a fiction, of course, and there's magic involved. But don't be mistaken. Don't get me wrong when I say there's magic. Don't get me wrong when I say there's magic, because one of the cool things is seeing the way the author introduces magic to the story without sounding A, fool, B, senseless. All right. And this is so nice because at the same time we have magic, but at the same time we have ordinary stuff going on. Okay, let me just rephrase it. At the same time we have magic. At the same time we have sword. I mean, people having to solve their problems through the sword, through the fight. Be that physical, excuse me, be that physical or psychological. All right. So this is, a quick way to say, to talk about the world, the universe, right? And it happens in all sorts of environments. We have like very cold places, very hot places, green landscapes, ocean. We have free cities. Okay, there are continents. There's separation of continents, and in different continents there are different political visions. Okay, the mainland, where the story happens, it's a monarchy, a big monarchy. Okay, and in other continents there are kind of republics. All right, and the way it all connects, and for me this is the brightest part of the work of George's work. The way everything connects sounds so natural, okay, that, okay, in my opinion here, I would say that if I open my mind a little bit more, I would say that, well, maybe this has happened in a parallel dimension or in another world in our universe, and he's just receiving it from it somehow, and just writing it. It's so natural, so cool. I don't want to diminish any previous work that I've read about this kind of literature, but this is certainly the top notch, I would say. Bottom line, it's something you start reading and you get dragged by the plots. Okay. One thing that I noticed, I mean, I'm rereading the books right now. Okay. After watching the HBO show years later, I first read the books and then years later, I watched all the seasons, HBO seasons of the show. After watching the whole HBO show, and parenthesis here, I haven't seen House of the Dragon so far. I totally psyched to see that, but not in a hurry. Okay, I will, and I will love it. I know that, but I'm trying to lower my expectations to make the experience better. Anyways, after watching the show, I'm rereading the books, but when as of the first time, I read it about 10 years ago. I mean, exactly 10 years ago. Well, I can tell you I was a very different person. Okay, I'm way more mature today than I was 10 years ago. But 10 years ago, it was a waters split. Okay, in my life in terms of one thing: politics. Okay, the whole plot that the strong characters, the strong peoples. I'm gonna use this word in the plural, okay, because that's what we have on Game of Thrones. We have peoples, right? The way they all of them interact, okay, is so based in politics, okay. That I believe that, again, that's my impression, okay. It's impossible you not. It's impossible you don't become like skeptical with politics in our own world, okay? And by skeptical, I mean like stepping back. You go like, hey, maybe the guys I thought were heroes are not exactly that, and maybe the guys I thought were villains, 100% villains, are not exactly that either, okay? And this happened to me, and I started understanding the world I live in much better, Again, guys, this is such a long discussion. I will, okay? I can totally promise I will be back with this, with more, okay? But this is my way to subtly introduce the work, okay? I really hope I've done that in the best way possible. Please let me know what you think about it. Hit thumbs up if you like it. And wait for more, okay? I'm Gary, your host for the day. I really have appreciated your company so far, and I see you later. Bye.